All right, so I've got my trusty razor, and I'm doing on a one guard. Uh, Here it goes. I think what I'll do is I'll do it down the middle, and then that way I don't have the option to cop out later. So yeah, let's go. Oh jeez. Oh jeez. All right. Oh gosh. Whew, right down the middle. Whew. Oh, so should I just leave it like this? Yeah, no. Could be worse. Oh, all right. So this is the first pass attempt. It's probably pretty. Wow, it's rough at the back. Yeah, that will go later. Whew. But yeah, this is this is what new me looks like. All right, I'll get used to it.
So you went for it, man. You did it. When did, this hair loss first sort of enter your life then?
Yeah, it's funny. So I was on a summer vacation with a bunch of my friends a couple of years ago. And it's a group of friends that I've gone on trips with, few years running now. Every year, we make a trip of it to go somewhere in the States. And so this was the second time that we'd been going. We're, traveling everywhere, taking pictures, and I noticed, there was this just a lot of thinning at the top of my head, and it was almost like a bald spot, really,
Yeah.
in all these different pictures. And once I realized it, the first day, I was like, oh my God, it's really apparent. And yeah, so I tried to do everything possible to really hide it. So, if I was tilting my head back, I'd put like my hands back like this, or I'd try to, take pictures from the side or the front where, the angles were definitely more flattering.
Yeah.
And that's really when it started, at least for me noticing. But I mean, from what I know, you've probably lost 50% or more of your hair by that time, anyways, right? So
Yeah.
probably been closer to 5 years, if anything. But
Right.
yeah, I'd say past 2.5 years have been, I'd say, the most noticeable.
Yeah. So how old were you when you first kind of noticed it when you're on that trip?
Yeah, I was 26,
Okay.
26
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
similar age to me, right? I was about, yeah, 25, 26 when I first sort of,
right,
I said like, oh, is that? No, I was like, that can't be my hair falling out, is it? And then I was straight into the bathroom with my phone camera, checking it, all the
right.
time. Nightmare. So you first started to notice, it was sort of going thin at the back then. And how did it play out over the next sort of few years? Were you like trying different treatments, trying to hide it at all? Or were you just kind of going with the flow? How did it pan out?
Yeah, I feel like I definitely didn't commit to one or the other. I was definitely half foot in, half foot out.
Right.
So for the first bit, I was in a frenzied panic. I looked up, all these different treatments, different methods. First off, trying to to do it from more of like a natural standpoint, so not taking any drugs or just altering my hairstyle. So I definitely did like a 1 or even like a 0 on the sides, and just keeping the top a little closer cropped more than I normally would. That was for the first year, and so what happened was, I've been volunteering the past 4 years with kids, right? And they're a great group of kids. They're all headed off to university and whatnot now. But throughout those past couple years, some of them were like, "Hey, man, like you've got a bald spot on the back of your head," and I'd be like, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's just old people getting old." Yeah, but then about I'd say almost exactly a year ago, I started with Rogaine. I looked up a couple different things. I looked up, hair transplants, and unfortunately, I don't have the resources, and I don't think the effort really to be able to go through with that.
Yeah.
And then the pills, I had a couple friends reach out, and I was talking to them, and they're saying, oh, there's no real side effects, or there are, but they're minimal and they go away after a while. But I just didn't want to risk it. And then Rogaine seemed like a pretty good middle ground at the time, where the side effects, if anything, were fairly minimal. It's been tested for some time. It's pretty easy. You just throw it on your head, and even then I didn't follow the instructions exactly. I did it, every day, like religiously. I'd even squeeze a bit into this travel container, just so I wouldn't have to bring the bottle, just so, my friends wouldn't be like, "Oh, hey, what's that spray you got on your head?" But I would do it every day. And initially I noticed like, oh, my hair isn't falling out as much. I noticed, I'd run my hand through my hair, and like there'd be so much coming out of my hands or onto the sink. And after Rogaine started, it helped a bit, but I didn't find that it grew back anymore. Like it didn't take me back, a year or 2 or 3 years. I think it held it the way it was supposed to be, and status quo essentially for the past year, which is fine. It is what it is. And then it's just different styling. Really being aware of what was going on. So if it was windy, it was wearing a hat, or if it was rainy, the same deal. Making sure that I had blow dried my hair, done, significant like combing and like styling and stuff. So, I mean, most people, I actually posted about it yesterday, and most people were pretty positive, pretty supportive about it. But a lot of them also said, "Hey, like I really didn't notice. I didn't really notice what was going on too much." But it was really just the basic stuff. It wasn't anything like the topic hair fibers or anything like that.
It's interesting. You mentioned there how you would have the little Rogaine into like a little travel thing. So obviously, this whole thing with hair loss, we know. This is why I got to thank you so much for just talking about this. Is the big thing that my channel does is we just have the conversation around hair loss, and we put it out there so it's not such a sort of taboo topic for guys to kind of feel embarrassed about, right? You mentioned there, kind of putting the Rogaine in the travel thing. Were you was it something that you thought about and you tried to like not draw attention to and kind of hide, not hide from, but something you did kind of feel a little bit like, oh, you were afraid that people might notice, or were you very sort of out there with it?
Definitely, for the most part, I tried to keep it under wraps 100%. Like, you don't want to show your weaknesses, especially if it's something that you can't change. Like I can't magically snap my fingers and regrow my hair, because otherwise that'd be our best option, right? But yeah, for a long time I definitely tried to dodge the topic or avoid it, change to some other conversation.
Did anyone sort of ever? You said, sorry, sorry to interrupt you. You did say that quite a lot of people didn't notice. Did other people pick up on it at all at times and sort of say like, "Hey, man, like it's looking kind of thin," or did you ever encounter that at all?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I said before about the kids that I was volunteering with, and again, out of no harm from there, but it definitely was a stab into the heart of like, oh geez, like if they can see it, that means everyone can, right? I was at a wedding one time, and I was talking to this one girl, and she was saying like, oh, it's been so long, I haven't seen you in a while. Wow, you've really lost a lot of hair. And that
That hurt.
killed me. Like I wasn't interested in anything. It was just catching up, but it was just, again, like, oh man, like the stabs right into the chest. And
Yeah.
then later she came up to me afterwards, and she was like, oh yeah, I was talking to my mom, and she was asking me, oh, who's that bald friend you were talking to? And in my head, I was like, I still have hair on my head. Like, I don't know what's going on. I know I have a hair loss issue, but yeah, so I think that's really when it hit me the hardest.
You kind of used said you used the Rogaine and things like that. When did
Mhm.
it shift from that sort of situation into kind of deciding like, hey, you said it was a bit of a slowly warming up to the idea of just kind of accepting it and going with the shaved head. Did you kind of set a time in mind when you wanted to go for it, or is it just slowly, what's built you up to the point now where you just said, hey, which is literally yesterday, right? You were like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm just going to shave it now.
Yeah. Well, I bought a year's supply of Rogaine, so that was for starters. It was I'm gonna try it out for a year, see what happens, and if it's magic beans and they work, then great, I will gladly pay the man. But it wasn't the case, and over the course of the year, I think it's as of April, so next month, really, where that 1 year kind of finishes off. And it just wasn't working, and with everyone having to self-isolate, and I don't know how it is where you are, but in Canada, the chief health minister saying, it's not going to be just a couple weeks, it's going to be a couple months or more of this whole self-isolation thing, where I thought,
Yeah.
honestly, what's the worst that could go wrong? For starters, if it's honestly terrible, I have like a angled head, or just completely bonkers head. I don't have to see anybody anymore, right? And that's okay. And if it's great, then it's great. Then I'll keep it. And if it's bad, I'll let it regrow, right? So
Yeah.
at the very worst, it will just be the same as it was a month or two ago. So
Exactly.
yeah, that's kind of what drove me to it. I was just sitting down, and initially, and I was like, oh, none of the hairdressers and barbers are open right now. Like, what am I going to do with my hair? I'm going to have to cut it myself. And then I thought, this is the perfect time. Like this, it's the perfect situation for me to go about doing it. So
Yeah. And it's
yeah,
interesting, right? How that reassurance of like, having your own sort of space and not being forced into like suddenly going out there and showing it off to people in case you're unsure about it. That reassurance gave you that extra bit of confidence that you needed to just kind of go for it, right? And
right.
how has it been? This obviously it's not been so long, but you said,
Right.
before you've already had a lot of good reactions and you're feeling more
Mhm.
comfortable. So how's it been, in the first sort of, what is it, even 24 hours yet?
It's great. Like I love being able to, like, touch my head. And I remember before, it was like, even with Rogaine, I was really, really uncomfortable with touching my hair, touching my head. Like it was uncomfortable, the feeling of like the hair kind of pulling on the scalp sometimes, or just not really being confident with, like, oh my gosh, like I have so much hair on the sides, and like it's really apparent when you feel it. Like sometimes if you style it right, it looks okay, it looks fine. But it's really when you press down and feel it is when you can see the difference. There's been a lot of positive feedback. So I kind of put a poll up on Instagram earlier, and
Awesome.
it was kind of like a almost 70-30 split of like 70% like, yeah, definitely go for it, and a 30 of like, oh no, please don't do it. But after the shave, like after everyone saw the after picture and how it looked, everyone was good with it. They're like, oh, you've got a
Awesome.
great head for this shaved head business. And that it turned out a lot better than they had expected. So
Brilliant.
yeah, I mean, I guess it's really just, if you don't know, go ahead and try it, and there's no harm done. It's not permanent. So yeah, it's led to so many conversations. I had a pastor or two reach out. They've got hair loss issues. a bunch of friends, like some of them were like, hey, like I know you've clearly, gone through this journey, and I'm thinking of hair transplants, or I'm thinking of doing this, like what do you think?
Yeah.
And I thought it was such a great avenue, like with your whole Baldcafe channel and Instagram page, like it's great. And I think it's, for me, it's been able to spawn off even just a little bit, even for like a day or two, just that dialogue there. So
Brilliant.
it's,
No, I love that. Now I'm really pleased for you, and I'm pleased to also know that you're obviously, you know, showing the confidence in the new look and things with the post enough so that people are now looking to you for kind of advice. That speaks volumes, really. It shows that, because people look for that. They say like, hey, that you've clearly dealt with something that might have been an insecurity for you for a while now, and I'm kind of
right.
dealing with the same thing. What should I do? And I think that's why another thing I encourage so much of guys when they take this step, it's just like, wear it with pride, put it out there, get it all out there, because you never know who you're going to kind of inspire to,
Mhm.
maybe tackle the same insecurity, but maybe something else, another thing they've been worrying about. And, they just kind of feed off each other. And I love that. I love to hear it. It's fantastic. You, in the video, right, we saw there, you went with the one all over. Now I have to ask,
Yeah.
because again, it's been a few years now, but I did a similar thing where I wanted to shave it off, but I was a bit sort of, it's weird, isn't it, that what the grade 2 or the grade 1 kind of seems like, oh, it's not bald, but it's still shaving my head. It feels like that little safe, like gray area. It was,
Yeah.
I've got to, is that like how you were thinking of it going into it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've at the barbers, I've asked them to do, ones on the side. And I figured, if I do a one and I start on the side, I have plenty of time, to cop out, to
Back
back
out.
out,
Yeah.
and just do the sides, make it look decent, right? And stop there. Um, and that's kind of why, in that little span of, oh, I've got this gusto to go through with it, I went down the middle. And then after I kind of did the full head with the one after the video ends, I looked at myself and I was thinking, you know what, I could probably do a zero. It saves on time, down the road. I don't have to go back and re-up and do it again so often, or at least a day, right?
Yeah.
And it just looks cleaner, I found.
Yeah.
So I was like, why not? Why not?
That's
Yeah.
awesome. I'm glad you kind of found the same thing, and that's what a lot of people do find out. They go for the one, and they almost afterwards, it's that initial shock is over, and they've done for it, and they realize, hey, it's not actually so bad. Like you said,
Right.
you want to go for the most convenient, the cleanest look, the most simple, and that's the zero. So no, man, good on you. I'm really happy for you, and I guess you're kind of excited now for this whole self-isolation thing to be over, so you can really get out there and go for it, right?
Yeah. The plan is, after however long it's going to be, I'm going to pop out a completely different man, and, friends, family, whoever, they're maybe not going to, recognize who I am, and that's okay, right? But yeah, it's a time where, if you're not going to be able to spend so much time outside or with friends, or, for me, I spend every weekend, with my buddies and stuff. So now that I have more time, I can dedicate it to more stuff. So, who
Yeah.
knows, right? Yeah.
And this is just a start, right? You've got a lot of time. This is the first thing checked off the list. I guess there's time
Yeah.
for other sort of self-improvements, and kind of self-reflection is something I've been thinking about over the last few days, to be honest. This downtime kind of gives you that less distractions to kind of think of like different positive changes you can start to make for when we can all get back out there into the real world, so to speak. Going into it and finally sort of pulling the trigger on it, and going for it. Is there anything else that helped you build that confidence enough to go for it that you want to share with anyone else who might be kind of struggling to take action on it?
Again, it's different motivations, different stages. I think for me, I was at a point where I had to be okay with it. It wasn't such a big leap of faith for me at that point. I think through talking about it, through joking about it, through talking, through people that had done it as well, that had gone and shaved their head, even earlier than myself. You know, one of my high school friends, he did it kind of right out of high school, like during uni, like first couple years, right? So he was a great resource to just, you know, chat with. And then also, I think the accessibility. I mean, I don't think everyone's got, you know, a razor or whatnot to just go off and do it at home all the time. And you know, luckily enough, I was able to do it. So I think accessibility for sure for there. It's a huge monkey off my back, like having to, you know, figure out what's going on back there and all that stuff. But yeah, outside of that, I think if you have a good support group that's willing to talk with you about it, even if it's nothing, even if it's just, you know, just to to whine about and complain about all the issues that you're having, I think it's good to have, you know, a good second, third set of ears just to listen to you. I think that was a really big thing for me.
Thank you so much for coming on, you know, and sharing this moment, like you said, just to kind of have this conversation and help other guys go through the same thing. I think definitely in this period of time, there's going to be a lot of guys who are probably, well, we know there are a lot of guys going through the same thing, but having that downtime to kind of really think about it and probably have more confidence to try it out, like you said, right? Just try it. I mean, what's the worst that can really happen? And
Right.
you never know. You could just, it's highly likely, but you could just love it and then be ready to you know, get out there when we get through all the lockdown stuff. So thank you so much, man. Thank you for coming on and sharing your experience. Really appreciate it.
You must be blinded by the lights. We came to shine here. Watch it look daytime in the night.